Everybody, this is Mike Nelson, of course, of the Mike Nelson Show. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure to subscribe right now. It really goes a long way. Today, I'm here with a pretty cool guest. I'm here with Thorslund. How you guys doing today?
Doing great, thank you.
So, give a little introduction to the viewers, for the YouTube channel, where you guys are from, your names, and, what you guys are playing.
Yeah, we're a rock and roll band, kind of inspired by the 70s through the 90s. We're two brothers, originally from Canada, been all around the United States, and here we are in LA. Just put out a record. We'll actually put out, a CD, and now if we're in a digital release, and we're about to put out an actual record on vinyl in a couple months. Been playing around LA. We've been playing at good times at Davy Wayne's a few times lately. It's one of our kind of favorite places, and got a show coming up November 8th at the Maui Sugar Mill Saloon in Tarzana.
So why did you guys choose, to use Thorslund as your name? Why didn't you guys go with something else?
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of bands. Like, we're brothers, so we've been brothers for a long time, and we've been playing music since we were young teenagers or earlier.
Yeah, I was like 10 when I started playing drums.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was like maybe 13 when I started playing guitar. I'm the older brother, and got some school friends together and tried to find other members, and I was like, maybe I should just recruit my brother, and then I'll have like a pretty permanent member. So got him interested into the drums. So we had a lot of different names, but then, this latest album, this latest group, I guess, where it's like, we got to think of another name. And Thorslund is actually our last name. It's from our Danish grandfather. And we're like, that's a pretty unique name. There's not too many Thorslunds in the world. If there is another Thorslund, they're probably not too distantly related to us. And sounds kind of Norse and, a little bit like Hammer of the Gods, a little like Led Zeppelin-y, and also maybe like Van Halen, they were using their name.
Yeah.
And Danzig, using like his name. So, but people don't really know it's our name. Sometimes they're like, oh, did you like name yourself after the band? It's like, but no, it's our name.
Yeah.
So what was some of your influences growing up, like for rock and roll music? What was it?
Yeah, I mean,
what's our dad obsessed with?
Our dad's obsessed with the Beatles, so we grew up with the Beatles just on constant loop in the house. So I think it's both of our favorite bands just by assimilation. Brainwashing, yeah. So that definitely factors in. I think, Thorslund, the band, has a lot of harmonies.
Not to say we sound like a ton like the Beatles, but just as far as like an early foundation of music, we liked, the harmonies. That's something that we bring, and even our music is maybe a little more 70s. We always we started singing together a lot. That's a big part of it. I think then, as we kind of started to find our own music, it was kind of like the 90s. We were getting into like a lot of the grunge bands, Soundgarden, Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, that kind of stuff got a lot of play.
Yeah.
And then we found kind of 70s bands like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Van Halen, Thin Lizzy, stuff like that. So this band, I think, when we sort of formed it, we've kind of had different genres of different bands throughout the years, but this was kind of like the mission statement was more like 70s kind of rock. And I think we're kind of evolving it now a little bit more and not being afraid to bring in some of the other influences and find more of our own sound. But I think even on our debut album, you'll hear that there's multiple kind of influences being brought together, and in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's right in saying like we're getting a little more free creatively now in our new songs that we're working on. Might not fall so much into the bucket of 70s rock. I kind of call this album like rock and roll history class. It's almost like all of our favorite things that we grew up with, all of the different tones and influences and just overall sounds, we put it together in the way that we interpreted it. So, if there is this sort of AC/DC kind of sounding riff, well, it just doesn't sound like Bon Scott, it's going to have like harmonies on top of it.
Yeah.
And it might have more of a Joe Walsh guitar solo or something. And that's kind of what makes us...
Like, we might think a song sounds like, I might think, this song I kind of was influenced by AC/DC to write the riff. But I don't sing like AC/DC. So it comes together in kind of its own way with little pieces. And I'm like, yeah, that piece was from this and that piece was from that. And, another part of that is just like our tones. We kind of became obsessed on this journey of tones. So, Tom is always like buying new drums and trading them and figuring out, oh, this is what John Bonham used and this is what Mac Cameron used, and I'm doing the same thing with guitar. So we've collected some pretty cool like vintage instruments that are on the album too. So trying to not just write songs that like that, but try to employ as much of like the vintage style DNA that we can inject into it.
So how do you guys, like, when you write songs and all that, how do you make that fusion and make it your own? Like, I know it's hard as a musician to kind of get different sounds that you're listening to. How do you make it your own?
I think we have a pretty good ear for just determining if something sounds cliche or predictable. There's a lot of rock bands out there that they kind of sound like rock, but they don't really do much for you because it just is kind of a rehash of the past. And that's kind of our main thing that we try not to do, is we're trying to create something fresh, like new art. And even though we have these influences, I think our creative approach together is to create something that is fresh and unique, but still, fulfills our mission statement of uplifting, like, positive music.
And sometimes, like, what's old is new again. I mean, for me, it's like, it came out of kind of like the 90s, like early 2000s. I really liked the early 90s music, and then there was kind of this post-grunge thing, and music just became a little too tough, a little too serious.
Like Creed and
like Creed, yeah.
And all that.
And it was all kind of like minor chords and like, and then I sort of started to get into like Led Zeppelin, where it's almost like a little bit country, and there's more major, but he floats between major and minor, and, it's not afraid to be a little bit, more like happy sounding or maybe a little goofy sometimes, but then also has like the dark parts. So I'd find like a new note in a scale, something that just sounded fresh, a little different. Even our drum beats, trying to have some of the stuff, we try to just simplify down to, like, we call it like caveman, like the drums don't need to be like going crazy. It's rock and roll, like just boom, ching, and there's like a savageness to that. So we kind of dance between like just the simplicity of like, almost like I know Kurt Cobain said like something about writing like nursery rhymes, like they're simple, but they're catchy and they live forever. And I always felt like great songs can be played on an acoustic guitar. You can't really play like Limp Bizkit on an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
It relies so heavily on all the sound effects and stuff like that. But you can play like a Nirvana song on an acoustic guitar. I mean, Nirvana Unplugged in New York is a great album, and you could probably even play like Smells Like Teen Spirit on an acoustic guitar and it would hold up. So we try to have like fundamental things like that. And I think we're building a little bit more complexity, but it's on top of like a foundation of like something, just kind of core and simple.
Yeah, so like for your music, how important for you is like the live show aspect? Because I know it's one thing to create music on your own, and what about taking that to a live show?
Yeah, I think Jeff and I are both we're perfectionists, and we demand a lot of ourselves and of each other. So our live show, we're really big on rehearsal, nailing our harmonies, tempos, all those things. We want our live show to just rock.
Yeah, and that's also like the difference in our personalities, which creates like the different flavors of the band. Because I mean, I'm the front man and I love to perform, and I've always kind of been like looking for an audience. So I mean, even if I wasn't a songwriter, I'd probably be wanting to be on stage for something else. And I think music is just a great form of like bringing people together and sharing something. It's almost like, can be like a religion, but it doesn't have to, stick to a certain thing and everybody's invited. But being at a rock concert and everybody's just enjoying, the togetherness. I like that. And it's not about, being like the star, but it's about kind of facilitating an environment where, you know, that can happen, and it's like a peaceful, uplifting thing. It should be, you know. So, and I just love the excitement and the danger of live music. You know, it's like a lot of bands now, I guess, you know, are like using more backing tracks and they're playing to a click and everything like that. And we don't like do any of that, you know, and it can sound good maybe, but I like the idea, like if you want to go to like a NASCAR race, you know, there's always a chance of like somebody's going to crash. And in the back of your mind, you're like, I mean, you don't want to die, but you're like a little bit like, there's the danger and the excitement.
Like a fight at a hockey game or something.
Yeah, you know, and so like
There's less of those now, but
yeah. You know, you go to a Thorslund show, we're probably going to play pretty good, but you know, we might like, who knows, we might just completely lose it or something.
Yeah.
You know? So we might crash because it's all live and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Now, talk to me about, you know, I've asked this before to other bands, you know, younger bands, you know, the rock is dead sentiment. You know, talk to me about that. You know, what do you think about that?
I don't think it's dead, but it's definitely underground now.
Not mainstream anymore for you?
Doesn't seem to be. I mean, I think it's building momentum for a triumphant return, and we hope to be at the forefront of that. But I think, you know, those like us who grew up with this great music, and there's hardly any out there, they have to go digging. And there are some great artists if you know, are willing to put the work in and, you know, surf through Spotify. But yeah, I think there's something going on in the music business where this kind of music is just not what's getting pushed to the front. And we hope that changes.
Yeah, I think like I think rock is a bit dead right now. I don't think that means the genre has nothing to offer and there's no future or hope for rock. It's not maybe very well represented, and I think, you know, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to show that like we can make music that has a foot in the past and recognizes the history and the influences, but it can bring something new, and it also just can carry the torch of like a great genre of music that I think should just continue to exist. So I think there's always room in the world for one more great song, and it doesn't matter if that song is a genre that you've heard before. If it's a really well-written song, then it's a really well-written song. And I mean, maybe some of the new rock bands, that's what they're lacking. Maybe there aren't a lot of great songs, but when I hear one and it's a rock song, I'm like, okay, you know. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to write those.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a huge demand. Jeff and I go to a lot of concerts, you know. We go to the Hollywood Bowl, we saw The Who. It's sold out.
I was there too.
Yeah.
20, it was before COVID, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was the last time they were here.
It was in October, I remember. It was like
Yeah.
really cool.
They had the orchestra.
Yeah, I was there.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we go to a lot of concerts. Like, you know, we went and saw Aerosmith in Vegas, and it's like people are going to see these great bands, but the thing is, all of them are inevitably ending. Steve Tyler just blew out his voice, you know. Like, we saw ZZ Top and then Dusty died, and we saw the Rolling Stones and then Charlie died. I mean, these guys, it's great that they're going as long as they are. Paul McCartney's doing his final tour, you know. So, but he's selling
like in 10
out.
years, there's going to be like none.
Right.
You know.
So who's going to pick up the torch, right? I mean, even Guns N' Roses are getting old.
Yeah.
So I know that there is a demand. People love this kind of music. It's just.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just wish I wish those classic bands were doing a little more to help to bring up the next generation of rock. You know, I'm disappointed when I go and see like the Rolling Stones and they don't have like a young opener.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like, well, what rock ends with the Rolling Stones?
Yeah.
I mean, so, you know,
True.
Hey, Rolling Stones, if you're listening, we're available.
Now, talk to me about, you know, how artists today have to be like social media influencers along with their music. Talk to me about those challenges. You know, a lot of musicians hate doing that, but what about you guys?
Absolutely. I mean, it is a challenge. I guess you have to kind of accept it a little bit. I mean, I watched the Tom Petty documentary like years ago, and the story basically, it's a great one. Everyone should watch it if you like rock and roll. But, you know, it's just the story of like, I'm from Florida and I'm just going to drive to LA and I'm just going to walk into Capitol Records and give them my demo tape, and then he like gets signed and then he's like a rock star. You know, and that like doesn't happen anymore. But I kind of believed that story for a long time. And that's why we like put out a full album, and we like that format. We like the way music kind of used to be, I guess. These days, it's like bands will just put out a single and another single and everything, or just they'll put out 1,000,000 20-second clips on TikTok or something like that. So I think we're trying to survive the times and, put energy into that. But want to make sure that we spend energy like writing good songs too, and focusing on the music too, so that we have something of quality to share. And in the long term, I mean, that's gonna maybe help build your following. But I mean, there's plenty of bands that maybe they haven't been discovered until like years after they kind of were fully active. Like, I mean, it's like the Pixies had like a huge like resurgence, like
When Fight Club came out,
like,
right?
yeah, I guess it had, and
Yeah.
like people would hear, like Kurt Cobain would say, "Oh, I love the Pixies," and people were like, "Who are the Pixies?" And then they go listen to them, and then they got back together like around 2000 or something, and they probably had bigger tour than they ever had earlier.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if our music, exists and it's online, you can find it. I joke and I say, on my tombstone is going to be my QR code that takes you to my Spotify page, because that's like how you can have immortality. Maybe someone won't discover our band for 50 years, but hopefully,
Hopefully sooner.
the digital relics will exist. But yeah, hopefully sooner. And if you discover us sooner, you get to see us live.
So is it true that bands like it's hard to get like tours now if you don't have following on social media? Is that true now? Like about they want a certain amount of followers and
It
music?
seems that way,
Yeah.
and we're independent still, and we haven't even really like tried to find a label. We focus on like,
Is that something in the future you guys want to do?
yeah,
Like, find a
maybe,
label?
and I guess the conversations we've had are just like, you can either just find a label when you're trying to get started out and have no leverage, and just kind of be at their mercy, or if you build something up that has some value, then you have a little more to bring to the table when they're talking about like what your contract would be. So that's why we were like, let's put out an album. Let's not just put out a song, and then that'll be like step one. So when people like discover us now, they can go to our Spotify or our Bandcamp or whatever they listen to, and they can listen to like 8 songs, and they can dig in a little bit, and it's not just like, oh, that band has one song.
Yeah. It's possible to actually become a fan.
Like you can't have a favorite band that has one song, Like there's a few great bands that have like maybe one album, like the Sex Pistols or something, but you got to put out like a decent amount of music, at least a few albums for people to have enough to latch onto. So, we're working on it. We're working on our second album now.
Yeah.
So when recording the album, are you guys looking like for a certain theme on how to keep the listener, like tuned in? Because now people have so many choices that kind of just jump off. They don't buy the album and they're just listening on Spotify. Do you guys have like a way of doing that when you made the album and the song order and all that?
We definitely crafted the song order, but that was more like the final stage. Like what is the best flow of the album? I think when it comes to music, for us, we're just trying to make the album we want to hear. We're trying to be the band that we want to see.
Yeah, you're not playing like to cater to us.
No, we're not trying too hard to be a specific thing. We're just,
I just want it to be good.
Yeah.
And I want it to be able to stand next to the albums that I like. I mean, maybe we unlock the social media code of 2020, summer 2024, and but then like who cares next month or something like that. I don't know. Like I'd rather just make something of quality that can, stand the test of time, and maybe we don't like blow up until, in 5 years, but then we have, 5 years worth of music that people can go back and look at. I mean, I remember when I discovered the White Stripes, it was like fell in love with a girl, and then I went to this is back when people actually bought CDs. I went to buy like their CD, and I'm like, how come they have like 3 or 4 albums? Like which one is it on? Like it's like their 3rd album.
Yeah.
And I think they did maybe an EP before that. And I thought that was actually kind of cool. Like they weren't just like sitting on like one album or waiting to put out like something that was going to be, perfect. They were already like 3 albums deep, So if people find us on our 3rd album, that's okay. But just trying to make these ones worth looking back to, too,
So for, why, this is a question I've asked other bands as well. So why play music in 2024? Like those people that maybe are on the fence of learning an instrument, maybe they're young or not that young, you can learn at any age. Why play music now when people I don't think people respect music like they should, in my opinion.
Yeah. Like why learn how to play an instrument? I mean, for me, it's like the greatest release. Like I play my drums every day for 30 plus minutes. There's just something about it. There was that Pixar movie about the blues, the piano player. When he plays it, he kind of drifts off into a cloud. Like that's what happens. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. And I think few people that aren't into the arts experience that, but I mean that's a real zen state to be able to just get on an instrument and kind of close your eyes and then let it take you away.
Yeah, Tom really likes playing his drums. I mean, we live in the same house, and I mean, to him, it's just like a habit, like getting coffee or something like that. I mean, I hear him like practicing drums. He plays like every single day, and he just likes to hear the tone of his drums.
That's so beautiful.
And I mean, I have a little bit of a different approach. Sometimes I don't play guitar. I'm more like, okay, I'm gonna play guitar with a purpose. Like I'm gonna write a song or something. I mean, there was a time. I mean, I'm finding that in the modern age, I'm getting distracted away from music, like the distractions that weren't there. I mean, I'm not that old, but I'm old enough to kind of remember the time when, there was less social media and you had to buy CDs and
radio was important.
Radio was more important.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about the White Stripes. I remember, a couple albums after that, Elephant came out, and I was like counting down the days, and then I went to the records CD store, like the day it came out, I bought the album.
You got, like,
I
the
took
poster.
I brought it home. I put it on like my Discman with like the headphones, and I just like closed my eyes and listened to the whole album, like all 12 songs or whatever on it in a row. And it's like, I don't think like anybody does that anymore. It's like you hear like a 30-second clip on Instagram, and having that experience, it's like people are missing out. And it's kind of a shame. And I mean, I know the same thing's happening with like movies. People don't really go to the theater. And, they'd rather just watch it at home or pause it.
But yet, like, people binge TV shows.
It makes
right?
sense,
Like, they
right?
watch a whole season in one day. I know. I've done it like twice this week.
Yeah.
But that's what an album is.
Yeah.
It's like, just put the headphones on or put the record on, good speakers, sit down and have a beer and just listen to the whole performance,
That's a fun experience.
Yeah, so I mean, if you don't do that, you should try doing it, because it's a great art form, and it's worth it. It's worth putting a little bit of focus on it.
Well, last question here. So, for those that are still watching, shows that are coming up, you want to promote, again, maybe you want to bring up some stuff that are coming out where they can follow you on social media, where they can find our music.
Absolutely. Well, we're Thorslund Music pretty much everywhere, so it's pretty easy. We're on Instagram at Thorslund Music, thorslandmusic.com. We're on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube. We have a few music videos you can see that are pretty nicely done. And our biggest announcement right now is our album that we've been talking about is coming out on vinyl, which is just kind of, again, that's another example of something that's like what's old is new again. I think like vinyl's like taken off so much now that like they're like opening vinyl factories.
Yeah.
And everybody's buying vinyl. So that's cool. So the rock and roll's not dead, because rock and roll I think is like a vinyl centric format among other things. But yeah, our vinyl comes out in November, and it's going to be like 180 gram blue vinyl. You can pre-order that on our Bandcamp, which again is Bandcamp/Thorslund Music. And then we're playing a show on November 8th at Maui Sugar Mill. That's in Tarzana. That's probably our next show, and we'll probably be back at the
2 times the Davy Wayne's.
we've been there every couple months. The last bit, we're getting kind of be regular there, and it really fits our vibe. So I think we like each other. So we'll surely be back there too. So
Yeah.
we'll keep you posted on Instagram. That's probably where we post the most about upcoming stuff.
Well, guys, I want to thank you for coming on the Mike Nelson Show today. It was great talking to you.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Appreciate it. Remember, stay heavy.